Hi there, this is Oliver Weingarten and I would like to show you in this tutorial how to set up a scene that will produce something similar to the clip I already posted on Vimeo called Throwing a Flame into a Box. So as you can see, I've just built a basic setup for this whole thing based on Eric's Explode Me compound he already showed in one of his tutorials. Okay, so we just start from here. As you can see, I've just already built a fluid box and put in there a grid which will be used as the emitter for a second point cloud, which I will use as a fuel emitter for this whole simulation. Okay, so yeah, I go ahead and just build at first the ground for the particles to bounce off from. Okay, here we are. I've just subdivided this geometry to produce nicer results for the later bounce of the particles from that geometry. Okay, the next step is that I will build a basic particle emission from this grid to function as a fuel emitter in the fire simulation. We get a second point cloud which I will call fuel, and have a look at the ice tree. I will make a break here and just set up the whole thing and explain later on what I did. Okay, let's see what I've built here. Yeah, as you can see there, I've plugged several randomized emitter values to our basic emit from surface compound. I randomized the rate between 80 and 100, also randomizing the speed between 25 and 30, randomizing the particle age limit between 2 and 3. Then we've got a bounce of surface compound over here, in which the bounding box is plugged in. The parameters I've set up that way: offset distance .5, bounce factor .5, and the random angle .2. Then a normal simulate particles node, and of course a delete particle at age limit node at that point. I also added some animation on the Y rotation angle of that grid, so that we get some nice flowy motion. Okay, the next step will be to connect our fuel to our fluid simulation. For that reason, I switch over to the fluid simulation ice tree and drag in the fuel, drag in emit data from points, connect them. Okay, let's have a look into the emitter compound. I don't think that I need oxygen here, just emit some heat, fuel of course, and some more velocity. But 50 might be too high, let's say something like 2. Okay. And the fluid behavior, just do something like 15,000 emission positions, and let's have a look what this produces. Okay, that's not bad. Just have a look at the particle display and say this, don't set it to automatic, I just say set it to point, and this produces those. Looks not bad. Okay, the next thing to tweak might be the gradients. So this F curve here You can also replace it through a rescale node if you like. This gradient gives the color of our point cloud in conjunction with the heat of each particle. So this means very hot, and this means quite cold. Okay. I will turn this a bit more into orange. This might be a bit more yellow. Okay, that's okay. Decrease the alpha of that gray to something like this, and drop down the alpha for that white color to 0, so that we might get some more flamey stuff going on, and don't see that much smoke rising. Okay. Yeah, the next thing might be to set up the vorticity to something higher than 3, let's say 10 or even 15 might be a good value, so that we get more turbulence in there and more detailed motion going on. As you can see, emFluid3 produces very nice movements in real time. I can move and orbit around this particle simulation, and as you can see, the frame rate is quite good. Okay, so far for the particle emission, fuel emission into our fluid solver. The next step will be to set up the indirect illumination on this bouncing box we just built. Okay, I'll show you how I achieved the indirect illumination here on that geometry, whereas the particles will be rendered out with the render point cloud. It does not produce any indirect illumination on that geometry, so I had to find a workaround, which is at least a very simple one. So we go ahead and select the geometry and give it a architectural material, decrease this, the reflection, and leave it to that gray. Now we select our fluid simulation and go over to the material and give it a constant material, and we also connect the color node to our color, radiance, incandescence, switch it over to the color attribute so that our material will receive the right color for each particle. The intensity of the incandescence, that is set to 2, for example, and switch on the final gathering, which is already on. I set it to a number of rays of 30 and the points of 15 and a maximum radius of 10, which means that the indirect illumination stuff will be very smooth. Okay, let's render a region. As you can see, the rendering takes a bit long. That's why I forgot to decrease the number of particles to, let's say, 3000 particles per emission position. Okay, let's run the simulation. I've just highlighted this point cloud, switch it on for a few frames. It's okay. Because I just need the secondary rays, it's necessary to switch off the primary rays of our fluid simulation cloud so that we don't see it in the final render. It's So I drag a region and let's see what we got. Okay, yeah, as you can see, the point cloud produces some indirect illumination on our geometry. It's quite blotchy and has much room for improvement, of course, but that's a principle for faking indirect illumination with emRender point cloud, in that case with mental ray, of course. So render this pass out, and okay, we'll go on to the next part. Okay, the last thing to do is to set up the emRPC node to render our whole stuff to disk. For that reason I just go ahead and disable the self-shadowing because I don't need it in this particular scene, but you might think of something like separating the smoke from fire and give it a self-shadowing parameter and render out a certain shadow path for the for smoke, for example, whatever you like. Also you can produce shadows on the ground and put them together and compositing whatever you like. It's very flexible. Okay, the particle settings are just nearly default. The only thing I changed is that I use particle color and a multiplier to bring down the overall alpha of the whole particle stuff. Another thing is that, of course, you have to increase the particle emission positions to something about, I don't know, 2 million or 3 million or something like that. So because I'm on a 32-bit machine, I won't crank this value up because I don't want to risk a crash. Okay. Finally, I'll show you a bit about the compositing. Okay, here we are in Fusion, and these are the pictures emRender point cloud produces. They're very colorful, as you see, and with slight color correction, bringing down the saturation and adding a small soft glow onto the lighter areas. And this is the background mental ray produced. As you can see, there's still much room for improvement to get it less blotchy and spotty, but it's for now just an example of how to set up this whole thing, compose it together, and okay, here we are with the fire simulation built with emFluid3 and render point cloud and mental ray. Okay, that's it. I hope you find it helpful, and see you next time. Bye bye.